DARYL DIXON episode 3. We're moving the story right along pretty quickly. That's one thing I really like about these shorter Walking Dead shows, is the shorter the show is, they have less time to really get the story moving, and that's sometimes a very good thing. And I think it's working really well for this show, for even Dead City, and I think it's just a good pace for maybe what they want to do going forwards for The Walking Dead. So I did like this episode. Let's get into it. We start the episode off, obviously, Daryl, Isabelle, Laurent, they all left that big group of kids from last episode, and they're off to, continue their journey. They do stop at this theater area. I don't know if this is somewhere that they maybe thought would have a radio or some sort of people that could help them, but they run across this random weird creepy psycho dude who's lost his mind already, another person in the apocalypse who's lost his mind, and he starts talking in weird ways. Immediately you're something's a little off about this guy, and they're essentially there to try and see does this place have a radio? Do you have a radio? They thought maybe this area would, and he does, but it's ripped apart and it's a mess, so the radio's no good. And then they really start to realize that this guy is a psycho, and he's just another person out there that can't help them at all. And it kind of I think this whole thing was more just to have this really interesting intro to the episode to kick it off in a really weird way. This guy heads out into the theater, and he's got a bunch of walkers set up an entire band. He's got a bunch of walker heads all strung up around with their guts and strings and tied up to all these instruments and stuff. And then he starts waving his arms in the air like he's conducting this thing, and it's super creepy. It's super weird, and I think that was just more done to be a really weird, creepy intro to the episode. But they leave that place. Obviously, it's no good. So their entire plan is now just to go to Paris and figure out where they're going to go from there. So we cut to them, traveling to Paris. And then they end up running into a different group, which we did see in the previews. I think even for the whole show in general, this guy, I don't know his name, but he was in the previews for the show, especially for this episode this week. And they're going to be running into another group, because that's basically what we do in The Walking Dead. We run into a lot of human settlements that are just kind of everywhere at this point. And this is a group that I think was anticipating Laurent. I think this might have been the place that they're going in general. So Isabelle does mention that, this is the kid. This is the kid, Laurent. He's the one. He's going to be the one to save us all. And immediately he's like, okay, hold on, let's go. So he brings them into their little settlement, this little community that they have in Paris. So you got to have that visual a little bit here with this new group. So they're just basically living in a building or whatnot. It's nothing really too different than we've seen before, but you obviously get the visuals of Paris and the apocalypse. You get the Eiffel Tower there, and they do mention how the tip of it, they add a little detail there, the tip of it was knocked down with a military helicopter at the fall. So I thought that was interesting. But that was just a little detail that they mentioned of what happened to the tower. Daryl's obviously still looking for a radio, because he thinks, okay, do you guys have a radio? Because I need a damn radio. I need to contact home if I can. This is the one big thing he's been trying to get since the show started. And they bring Daryl to their communicator. It's this old guy who has a bunch of pigeons. So this is the old guy who puts messages on pigeons and flies them off. And Daryl's like, yeah, I can't fucking work with that. I cannot work with that. That is no good for me. I thought that was pretty funny. And then we got some shots of Laurent in the new community here, and everyone's just kind of looking at him like he's this savior. He's going to save the world, and everyone's treating him all weird and different. And then he looks up and he talks to this lady who had just lost someone that she knew. And again, they play it all off like he is this kid who has come to save everyone and save the world, and they're treating him like this extremely important person. And I think it's very strange, because I don't think really there is anything particularly different from him than anybody else. I think it's just all this whole religious belief thing that they're trying to do with, he's going to be the one. He is the one to bring us out of the apocalypse and save the world or something. It's weird. I don't think they'll do anything with him, especially with something they said at the end of this episode where he's probably just a normal kid. So we cut to Codron. I think that's his name. He is our bad guy from the first episode. You saw him a little bit at the end of last episode, but you see him a lot more this episode, finally. So we're picking back up with him quite a bit. and he's on his own. So he doesn't have his little crew that he had in the first episode, but now he's on his own. He's going to meet up with a higher military power, and this higher military power we did see at the end of episode 1 as well. Whereas this lady with her, I don't know, it's just this military group that's kind of taken charge of the area there in France. And she's the one that's also looking for Daryl, because there's some connection between her and her group and Daryl and how he got there. Because that ship that Daryl was on that got there, obviously he escaped from them. We saw that at the end of episode 1 where, he escaped and he left a mess and they were talking about Daryl. So they're after the American, and he is also after the American because he killed his brother. So they have something in common. So he sits down with her. He's like, "What brings you here, Codron?" And he mentions that, like, I am here to help you. This American man, he killed my brother, and I have this recording that Daryl left on his this little recording that Daryl left really isn't doing well for him. I know it was just kind of like a little thing to have Daryl speaking as like a little beginning monologue as the show started, but boy, it is not serving well for him, that little recording he did on the recorder. I don't know why he did that. Like, story-wise, it ain't helping him too much, because now it shows that he knows about this American. He's there to help her find him. So now they are in agreement. She's happy, and they're in agreement, like, we're going to go find this American, DARYL DIXON. So now he is working for her. I don't really know what he's going to totally gain from working with her or not, but either way, he's working with her now to find Daryl. I think he just wants to find him. That's his sole thing. And I'm still curious to learn the story between this lady and her group with Daryl, because that's still the whole story that has yet to unfold, and how he got to France to begin with, because we don't really know what happened yet. Somehow he got there, and I believe she is involved, and it was involved with that ship with that scientist on there. And with that scientist on there, and they were studying walkers and stuff, we cut back to that too. As they're leaving their meeting, we cut to the scientist guy. He's writing on a little board, and there's some really freaky walker stuff in this episode. They're like experimenting on, I think, a burner. I think this is one of the burner walkers. And I don't know if they're doing something to the walker or they're just chaining it up and studying it. I think they might be doing something to it, because they're writing things down. They're like yelling certain things, and they're timing on how quickly something happens. And this walker starts to freak the hell out, and it like starts pulling on the chains that it's like chained to the wall, and it pulls the chains out, and then it starts like running towards the glass, and then it just like runs towards the glass, it explodes, and it just kind of like, I don't know, it's a big mess, and the walker is moving all weird and stuff. And I think these burner walkers in general just move very weird, and I think we're going to see more than just the burners in this episode, or in this show. I think the trailers have shown us that there's going to be like the faster, more aggressive walkers that we may have seen, maybe the same kinds at the end of World Beyond, that little tease that was in France. I think we might see some of those as well, but there's a lot of these burner walkers in this episode, and I don't know what they're trying to do with these walkers in this group with this lady, but they're really studying the walkers and trying to maybe figure things out and how they operate. We've seen this a little bit before in The Walking Dead, but with the CRM stuff, even with World Beyond. World Beyond wasn't that great of a show. It was okay. We did see a little bit of the CRM stuff that Rick is going to be dealing with, but I mean, the show, it was fine. I'm not going to get into that show, but they did focus on like studying of the walkers and like how they, not how they think, but how they operate and how walkers interact with the environment, how they can maybe deal with them, how they can eradicate them. And it seems like this is now another group that is trying to study these walkers, and it's a little different for them because they have these different variants over here in France. So it's not like in the US where they're just studying like the same walker over and over with hardly any variants over there. It's now that these burners are in France, and I think they have those aggressive ones too. They have different things to understand about these walkers, and I really hope that the study of walkers and maybe a slow progression to some sort of cure storyline can be developed in the Walking Dead universe. I know they're trying to develop this whole Walking Dead universe now, right? I would really be interested in them exploring how that whole storyline of the walkers. Yeah, I want to understand more of the virus and the walkers and what happened and why all this is happening, because we've never explored it that deep, and I want to hear more of it. So we cut to Isabelle and Daryl. They kind of leave that community for a bit. They're in Paris, so they go to Isabelle's former home. It's kind of a mess now. It's just kind of sitting there, and obviously they're there because they need to get into this place to basically offer goods to trade in for information so Daryl can get to like a boat. We saw last episode with Isabelle, she is very much in possession of some wealthy things. She was stealing things, drugs, watches, wealthy valuables and stuff, and she has that available. So they're there to get that type of stuff. Daryl's also exploring her apartment. He does see a picture of her and Quinn. It's the guy we saw last episode. Last episode, I did make the idea that like we're never gonna see him again. I think that was a very quick assumption that I made there, and I wasn't that correct. They obviously were setting something up, and it came true in this episode just a little bit later. But we do get to see Quinn here with Isabelle, just some like pictures in a photo booth. And if you look at the pictures, I'm just noticing it now actually with my screenshot. She doesn't look too comfortable in those pictures. I think this is a guy who just wasn't that great for her, and it was not that great of a relationship, and you could tell when we saw him last episode as the apocalypse happened, he just wasn't really the greatest of guys, so it kind of made sense for her to finally abandon him. You can also see a picture of her sister Lily, and obviously last episode we saw that Lily is Laurent's mother. And we don't know who the father is yet. We do learn that in this episode, though. But we get a little bit of information on that again. Again, though, she's there to get these valuables that can possibly be traded to get information. Daryl and Isabelle, they kind of interact. They just kind of like build this, like slowly building this relationship between her and Daryl. I don't know if it's going to amount to anything like, beyond just like this friendship of theirs. I don't know what they're doing with their relationship in this show yet, but I mean, we'll see where it goes. As they're leaving the apartment, they need to get back, and as they're heading out, they do run across this child walker, and we don't see many children walkers in The Walking Dead as I believe. I don't believe we see that many children walkers. The Walking Dead may have had a few children walkers, but we don't really see many kid walkers. It's just not something they do. So it is interesting to see a kid walker here. And it's very specifically done because this kid walker here is actually that little girl that Isabelle left at the last episode when they were flashing back to the apocalypse happening. This is the little girl that was in her area. She lived in the area, and she was on her scooter. And this is that same girl. So she didn't make it that long after the world fell, obviously. And after you see the girl, this crazy walker stuff starts to happen, and they start to fall from the top of the building. We kind of saw this in Dead City too, where they were falling from the tops of the buildings on the cars. They're doing it again here, but this time it's these burner walkers. And I say these burner walkers, they move weird because once this burner walker, specifically this one right here, once it falls, it hits the ground, it sizzles a little bit, and it gets up and it moves so weird. And the one behind Isabelle does move weird too, some of the other ones, but this one in particular was really freaky. And I do like that they're doing these different things with these walkers now. It's more interesting than just watching, the same old walkers from The Walking Dead, stumble around until they get killed, just like they all do. These ones they feel a little bit more threatening than normal, which I do like that. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what these burner walkers are. I don't know if we'll explore more of how the hell they're even like this. It's strange, but I like it. I love these new walkers. I think they're super fascinating, and I can't wait to see those other aggressive ones too. I hope we get to see lots of different variants in France. So Daryl, he literally stabs this walker. He uses it to I don't know if he's using it like burn like the weeds and stuff around the area in the glass to get out of the area, but he smashes it against the wall, has it burn through like a hole or something. I don't think he's getting through the glass or anything, but it's he's getting through all the brush and stuff. So as they get safe, Isabelle and Daryl are safe. They do reunite with Laurent and the other lady, and Isabelle immediately hands the picture of Lily, her sister, to Laurent and says, that's your mother. She doesn't mention to Laurent that his mother is her sister, so she hasn't told him yet that I'm literally your aunt and you're my nephew. She hasn't mentioned that yet. I'm sure it'll come up at some point here, but she does give him the picture like, yeah, that's your mother. So a little bit later, we're going to head off to a new place where we can possibly trade our goods and get information. And this guy that's part of that group, he brings them to this underground place. It's a little mysterious, right? So there's this guy guarding it at this like train tunnel, and they go through these creepy catacombs and like underground, and immediately it's like, where are we going? That's really creepy and weird. And it brings us to a apocalyptic nightclub. Little weird, little strange. It's not what you'd expect to, if you watch the trailers, you'd expect to see it. But, you know, after you go through these freaky catacombs and stuff, it's all dark and mysterious like a cave. And then you lead to this. It's kind of like, oh, it's weird. So we get to this like apocalyptic nightclub with a bunch of weird people. And Daryl basically sits down with this guy and needs information. He wants to find out where he can possibly get a boat or a radio or anything. He wants to get home. And this guy, immediately it turns south, like this guy is no good. They do show off their goods a little bit that they took from Isabelle's apartment, but he's not really any good. But as they're sitting there and talking, they do cut to this guy who's watching them from across the nightclub. And it's like, okay, that's a little weird, a little mysterious. Who is this guy going to be? Obviously, we're setting up some sort of thing here. Like, all right, this is somebody that's watching them. We're gonna meet them real soon. And he walks up, and there it is. He's Quinn. It's Quinn from the last episode. So I was quite wrong about that last episode when I said, oh, we're probably done with him now. We'll never see him again. That's very incorrect. He is like another antagonist type of character for this show. He's not really that great. So he's running like this nightclub, and he confronts the guy who was no good for Daryl. He was starting to, you know, have a little tussle with Daryl, and he kind of, you know, slashes his like nose with a knife or something. It's kind of his way of order and showing that like, yeah, I'm in charge. Okay, don't do this shit. So after he sends a guy off, we get the reunion between Isabelle and Quinn, which is kind of awkward, kind of weird. And there's this tension here that Isabelle clearly very much never wanted to happen again. She never wanted to meet this guy again. She never wanted to see him again. She probably hoped he was dead. So obviously they talk to him. They think, you know, okay, can you help us, Quinn? Can you help us maybe find what we need? Can you help Daryl here? And it ends up just being more about Quinn and Isabelle's like reunion here. That's kind of the overwhelming narrative here in the conversation. Laurent does walk back up. Quinn mentions, is this your kid? Is this your kid? No, this is Lily's kid. He's like, oh, that's interesting. And it's like, okay, he knew that Lily was pregnant, and that's why he wanted to maybe leave her behind last episode, because he said, oh, we can't bring her along, she'll just get in the way. And he's now realizing that this is that kid, and Lily is nowhere to be seen. So they bring him back to the back room, and they want to chit-chat and maybe try to figure out if Quinn can even help him. But immediately you can tell that Quinn is a character that he feels like that character who's just about to snap at any moment. Like you just feel like he can snap at any moment and just lose his mind. He's like that very unstable character, and I got that entire feeling this episode with him. So we get a little bit of interaction. We do learn some stuff with Quinn. So as he's talking to Isabelle, you know, this weird reunion between them, he does mention that it's very unkind to not mention my son and to not introduce me to my son. And we're like, wait, what? So we reveal that Quinn is actually Laurent's father. So he is the father of Lily's kid. So that is a relationship, something that happened that we were previously unaware of. And it kind of makes more sense now on why he may have wanted to get rid of Lily. Maybe he didn't want that being uncovered as things went. But obviously now we are realizing and noticing this. So he reveals that Laurent is his son. And as the conversation continues to get more like uncomfortable and intense, Daryl's like, nah, fuck this, screw this. We're done. Screw this guy. By the way this show just drops F-bombs, I know it's so simple and it's like, okay, F-bombs, great, whatever, who really cares? But The Walking Dead, there's got to be some sort of new restrictions lifted within The Walking Dead stuff now. I don't know how it worked with the original show, but They hardly ever dropped any F-bombs in the original main show. They did a few in the last few seasons, but they had like a limit, and they had like one a season or something. With this show, they don't care. They just drop whatever they need. And I say that because sometimes, like, dropping F-bombs and cursing like crazy in these shows doesn't make much sense, and it's not needed. But for The Walking Dead's universe, and just how like shitty and crazy this world is, it makes perfect sense for characters like Daryl to be dropping the F-bomb every now and then, Negan to be dropping those F-bombs. I mean, God, all the opportunities missed to not have Negan dropping F-bombs during the all-out war arc in Walking Dead. I would have loved to see that more. I know there's like a cut scene for the DVDs for like Negan. When they first met Negan, there's like a ton of F-bombs to introduce Negan, and it was really, really cool. But it's obviously something that never got put onto the main cut of the episode because there was these, television restrictions. And again, I don't know how it works now. There's got to be some sort of change or lift on it, but I thought that was cool. I just starting to really think that like it just makes the show feel more real. So obviously once they leave, Daryl's all pissed off. He's like, we're not trusting this guy, and Isabelle is kind of mad now at Daryl that like she says, oh, I could have handled it. It's you didn't need to do that. So back in the nightclub, Quinn is back inside, and immediately they are now confronted by Codron and his little group of military people that he's gained from the lady. So he's there to find Daryl. He's there to find the American. And obviously Quinn is not going to be hesitant towards that just after their interaction just a moment ago. So they let them in and look around the place and try to find Daryl. So Daryl and Isabelle, they're still interacting. They're still talking about what just happened, basically. And Daryl is kind of fed up. He's like, you need to tell this kid the truth. It's getting kind of old. And he mentions like, maybe this kid really isn't anything special, and the only thing special about him is really that he got lucky, and he lived. He's just a kid who lived, and that's why he's special, and there's nothing really else special about him, and you just need to let him know that. Like, you just need to tell him the truth. Okay, maybe there just really isn't anything like crazy, weirdly, supernaturally special about him. Maybe he's just a normal kid, which I literally think it's just that. I don't think they're going to do anything really freaky weird with Walking Dead. I think it's going to be pretty grounded on the characters here, and it's like Laurent's obviously not, he's special to Isabelle. Laurent is special to Isabelle, but I don't think he's just not special to the world. He's not going to save the world or anything. He's just a kid. And after he says that, and after they have their little argument, Laurent was there the whole time listening, and he screams off, I hate you both, in French, and he runs off. So he literally runs off right as Codron comes in to cause chaos. So everything kind of goes into chaos at that moment. So they all kind of split up. Isabelle runs off to find Laurent, and Daryl runs off to get away from Codron, who is very much hunting him down to get him. So they fight. They end up, getting into a fight at the end. And Daryl basically wins this fight between him and Codron. We got a shot here. It's like he wins. He definitely beats Codron. He's about to kill him until Codron's men up on the rooftop start shooting down. So Daryl has to escape. So Codron, he lives, but he was pretty shook, and he wasn't really gonna get up right away. He was almost dead. So we do cut back to Isabelle one last time before the episode ends. She's looking for Laurent, and that kind of sets up where we're going to go next episode with trying to find Laurent. Like, where did he go? As Daryl is trying to escape from Codron's men who is shooting at him, he stands on this rooftop, and it's very weak, and it's crumbling, and he falls right through the rooftop. We don't know where he's going to land. He'll be fine, though. What's funny is this last shot of the episode with Daryl falling through the roof. It's funny because we're like wondering, okay, what's going to happen with Daryl? He's going to be fine. We know he's going to be fine. But like, what's going to really happen? But we know he's really fine because the trailer for next episode plays immediately after, and he's literally fine. I always think that's kind of funny. It's like, okay, well, why would you put a little cliffhanger if you're just going to show the teaser ring in the next 10 seconds anyways? So Daryl will be fine. Don't know how he'll get out, though, so it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens. But he does fall through the roof, and that's how the episode ends. So Laurent has run off as a little frustrated child. Isabelle and Isabelle learns a little bit more about Laurent, who the father of Laurent was. So we got that reveal as well. We also got to catch up with that one lady after Daryl. So then now it's like a big team up between Codron and her to find Daryl, because it's still trying to uncover what happened with Daryl and how he got to France to begin with. So there's a lot of people after Daryl. I would say Quinn is probably after Isabelle and Laurent. That's my guess. And yeah, I mean, I think the story is developing well. I think last episode, I think I liked more still. I think I just liked the vibe and the atmosphere a little bit more with last episode. I don't know why. I think I just liked it more. But this was still a very good episode, and I think this show is very, very well done. And I'm very much looking forward to the next 3 episodes. I think this show is very promising. Dead City was really good. I really liked The Walking Dead Dead City. But I think I personally like this one more, because I think it fits The Walking Dead's universe a little bit more. Because, I mean, I guess some of the city stuff was kind of tacky in some way, up on top of buildings, throwing people off. I mean, you also got Daryl in this one too. So I think it just is fun to watch. I think if anyone's going to really jump back into The Walking Dead after the main show, like wondering, okay, what's going on with The Walking Dead? Do I still want to check out The Walking Dead? What's up with these new spin-offs? I think the DARYL DIXON show is a very good one to kick off with and realize, okay, there's still something really fascinating to watch with The Walking Dead. And I know, I just hope that these spin-offs can kind of build a following again, a little bit at least, because I think they're really well done. And if they don't, they don't. But I hope the Walking Dead universe can continue to be like these shows, because I think these shows are really good. So we'll see what happens next week. But yeah, I'm liking the show. I really am. And I think I really like a lot of the new characters too. A lot of the new characters are very fun to watch. We'll see where it goes.